I did 26 years working casework, and the better half of that in the end was working cold cases. And those cases got on national media. I think I've been on Dateline more than any other detective in the country. And the people who are involved in the process, if it's not that show or other media shows, are not always believers, but they get a sense of, well, this guy can puzzle a case together. Not that I'm the only one who can do that, but you develop that skill set. If you're working in this industry, trust me, if you're out there watching this video, you know, if you're a cop, how to put a case together. So once you've demonstrated that, I think, for people, they may not agree with your conclusion, but remember, the evidence doesn't say anything. And science doesn't say anything. It's scientists and evidence evaluators that say something. So we're all looking at the same data points. We're all looking at the same evidence. I've got to draw an inference from the evidence, and I land it this way. Now, you may not agree with my inferences, but I think you can at least respect the fact that I've done the homework of presenting the evidence so an audience can assess it for themselves. So that's why I think I have supporters who don't agree with my inferences, but they respect the process. And that's one of the things I try to do uniquely in God's Crime Scene. I'm trying to give the readers not just here are the facts, but here are how detectives assemble facts to develop a case. Here are the processes, the rules that we obey, how we put a cumulative case together. How do we make cases? That's what I want you to come away with also, not just here are the facts, because you can get that out of any book. I want this to be unique in the sense that this is a book that not only gives you the data, but it instructs you on how to build a case, how to put the data together. This book, God's Crime Scene, is actually an attempt to kind of interest people in the case for God's existence using principles of cold case investigations or homicide investigations, because I think a lot of these things are transferable. This is a discipline that's transferable. As an example, typically when you walk into a death scene, not every death scene is a crime scene, because there are 4 ways to die, and only one of those is criminal. You could die by natural causes, accidentally, by way of suicide, or by homicide. So the first goal I have to do is to determine which of these 4 is most reasonable given the evidence in the room. And sometimes one of the simplest ways to do that is to take an approach that it's a little game I call inside or outside the room. Because if you can explain all the evidence inside the room by staying inside the room, there's a good chance this is not a homicide. For example, if I've got an injury, a gunshot injury, and there's a pistol in the room, but the doors are all locked and there's no evidence of an intruder, and all the fingerprints in the room come back to the victim, and it's even the victim's gun registered to him, well, I can explain everything in the room by staying inside the room. That's going to be a suicide. And it could look kind of crazy, but it's still going to be a suicide, regardless of how it looks, because there's no evidence that I have to explain by going outside the room. If, on the other hand, I've got something in the room that I can't explain by staying in the room, I have to go outside for an explanation. Maybe that gun is not registered to him, and there's unknown fingerprints on the gun, or there's bloody footprints leading out of the house. Well, now I've got to go out of the room to get an explanation for what's inside the room. Now I've got to consider the real possibility of an intruder. That changes everything. I thought, well, could we take the same approach and apply it not just to a death scene, but apply it to the entire known natural universe and ask this question: can we explain everything inside the universe by staying inside the room? If we can, the naturalism is sufficient. There's no reason to think we have an intruder. On the other hand, if we have to go outside the natural universe to explain the stuff that we see inside the room of the natural universe, that changes everything, because now we've got good reason to believe we've got an intruder. Of course, if we had that kind of an intruder, we'd have to consider the kind of cosmic nature of this, the divine nature of this kind of an intruder, at least the extra, supernatural quality or nature of this kind of an intruder. And that's really the premise of God's Crime Scene. We're going to examine 8 pieces of evidence in the universe and ask the question, can we explain these things and account for these things by staying inside the room?